Hey guys, it's Lucky Ghost here, and today we're going to be going over the Stamina Necromancer PVP build. The Stamina Necromancer is able to put out an insane amount of burst damage and while being incredibly tanky. We're also going to be utilizing a few sets which are going to greatly enhance the amount of burst damage we're able to output. We're going to take advantage of one of the new sets added with Blackwood, as well as some tried and true sets that have long been in the meta. This build is powerful, it's fun, it's easy, it allows you to put out an insane amount of burst damage, and if you're not already aware, burst damage is the key to taking out your opponents in PvP. You need to put out a lot of damage in a very short amount of time in order to have a chance of taking down those other players in the Battlegrounds and in Cyrodiil. So in this guide, I'm going to be going over the gear, the skills, the passives, and the champion point setup for this build, as well as going over the rotation that you're going to need to implement in order to trigger all of the burst damage bonuses that this build has built into it. First, let's talk about the gear. We're going to be running 6 pieces of medium and 1 piece of heavy on the chest for the increased damage mitigation that large slot is going to provide us with the extra armor. Having pieces of medium is going to make it so that we have a ton of stamina and an insane amount of burst damage built into our character. It's going to allow us to roll dodge a lot, which is going to allow us to completely avoid a ton of damage in Elder Scrolls Online. And for the damage that we can't avoid by dodge rolling, we've got another trick up our sleeve, and we'll touch on that when we get into the skills. This build is going to be running 2 pieces of Baylorg, 5 pieces of Clever Alchemist, 5 pieces of Diamond's Victory, as well as Vodashron's Perfected Maul. All 4 of these sets are burst damage sets. The Baylorg set is going to increase our weapon damage and penetration by roughly 3,000 each for 12 seconds after we use our ultimate. The Clever Alchemist is going to increase our weapon damage by 660 for 20 seconds after we use a potion. Diamond's Victory is going to increase our weapon damage by 422 when we use Blast Bones. And by the way, you're always using Blast Bones, so you should always have this bonus up. And Vodashron's Perfected Maul is increasing our weapon damage by 38 up to 5 times. Upon heavy attacking with this weapon at full charges, we're going to unleash 8,000 damage to all enemies within 8 meters of us, or burst. So what you have here is a 20-second buff from Clever Alchemist, a 12-second buff from Baylorg's, an almost permanent buff as long as you're casting your Blast Bones every few abilities, which you should be, from Diamond's Victory. And then once you've got all of those ticking, you can heavy attack with your Vodashron's Maul to unleash even more damage. Remember, all of the damage numbers you're seeing here are unbuffed. So in that 12-second window, 20-second window, all of these are greatly inflated, allowing you to do an insane amount of damage when all of those are triggered at the same time. I'll go over more on how to do that when we're going through the skills and the rotation to follow. On this build, I wore half well-fitted and half impenetrable to get a nice combination of roll dodge ability and crit damage resistance. On the jewelry, we're going to be running weapon damage enchantments infused, and on the weapon, we're going to go for a maul for the increased penetration that mauls provide, and we're going to make it sharpened for another 3,276 penetration. We're going to be back barring Clever Alchemist because we have to front bar Diamond's Victory. Diamond's Victory's 5-piece bonuses are procced when you cast the ability. We are going to be procking this with Blast Bones. Blast Bones is on our front bar, so if we don't have the 5-piece bonus of Diamond's Victory active when we're on our front bar, we will not be able to proc it every time we cast Blast Bones. So for this reason, we are going to be back barring our Clever Alchemist, which means you just have to remember to go back to your back bar to pop your potion before unleashing on your enemy. After a few fights, you get in the habit of it really fast, so don't feel bad if you find yourself accidentally popping your potion when you're on your front bar. It might take a few fights to break that habit. As for our poison, we're going to be using Escapist Poison. This is going to immobilize our target for 1.6 seconds, drain the health from them, and drain the magic from them while restoring those resources to us. If you find that your sustain is really struggling, feel free to swap out 1 or 2 weapon damage enchantments for stamina recovery. Just recognize that this is definitely going to impact the amount of damage that you're able to put out. However, it's more important to have stamina than to be able to do a little more damage. So, you know, it's a trade-off you may have to work with there until you get more familiar and more efficient with your character. There are a few things that you're going to be able to do to increase your sustain through the use of our abilities, so we'll talk about those next. And speaking of, let's talk about the abilities next. The first ability on the front bar is Blighted Blast Bones. This is our ability. This is the heart and soul of the Necromancer. It puts out an insane amount of damage. It puts out AoE damage, and it also applies Major Defile to the enemy, reducing their healing received and health recovery by 16%. This is a beast both in PvE and it's incredibly effective in PvP. The fact that it has a 2.5 second fuse on it is especially useful in PvP. It's going to allow us to queue this ability up go ahead and activate all of our armor bonuses and also proc our Dawnbreaker while our Blast Bones is in transit. So our Blast Bones and our Dawnbreaker and perhaps a Dizzying Swing, or if the enemy is now low health, and Execute are all going to land on the enemy in an incredibly short window of time. This is how we burst, and it's largely made possible by the fact that Blast Bones has a 2.5 second fuse on it. You'll be seeing me do this to a lot of people in the footage that's playing behind me as I talk about these skills. Next we have Dizzying Swing. This is a 2-hand spammable. It's essential for PvP if you're running a 2-handed weapon. Not only does this ability do great damage by itself, but if you follow it up with a medium attack, it knocks the enemy to the floor. This is insanely useful in PvP. You're always going to want to hit your enemy with a Dizzying Swing, and if you haven't knocked him down recently, make sure to do a medium attack. A medium attack is literally just holding the mouse down any length of time longer than actually clicking it. So if you do like this, just a little wind up, it's going to throw out a medium swing, which is going to knock your enemy to the floor for 2 seconds. They're going to have to break free and get up. It's going to chew through a ton of their stamina while also leaving them vulnerable until they do get up. They're not going to be able to block or dodge roll while they're on the ground, letting you unload on them. The third ability on the front bar is Executioner. Executioner is, as the name suggests, the execute ability for this build. It's going to deal up to 400% more damage to enemies under 50% health. So once you see the enemy getting to around 30% health or so, make sure you start wailing on them with Executioner. This ability is going to do a ton of damage to those low health enemies. It's going to be essential for finishing off those enemies once you've unloaded your burst combo on them. The next ability on the front bar is Rally. Rally is going to do a few things for us. This is a fun skill, especially in PvP. It's going to give us 20% more weapon damage for 20 seconds, and it's also going to give us minor endurance, which is going to increase our stamina recovery for the same length of time. So this is improving our stamina sustain, and it's improving our weapon damage by 20%. So make sure that this ability is active at all times. This ability being active is also going to synergize with our front bar Vateshran Hollow's weapon, which means that anytime this is up, it's adding stacks of weapon damage through that weapon as well. As a reminder here, the Vateshran Hollow's weapon is going to give us stacks of 38 weapon damage up to 5 times. So you always want to have your rally up, and that's going to put you at the max stacks of weapon damage. That's going to give you 190 bonus weapon damage by having those 5 stacks, as well as allowing you to follow with a heavy after you've unloaded your burst combo on your enemy, which is going to drop another 8,000 damage on the enemy, and that's AoE damage, so that's hitting all the enemies around you. So for that reason, make sure you keep rally up. Another nice thing about rally is you're going to heal for 4,234 health when rally ends. The final heal is increased 15% for every 1 second up to a max of 300%. This could effectively do a 12,000 HP heal instead of a 4,000 HP heal if it's left for its full duration. This is a really large heal, so one of the things you can do is you can reactivate your rally early to proc this heal ahead of time. Just know that if you're reactivating it right after you had casted it, it's going to be a smaller heal and it's going to be fairly expensive. And unless you absolutely need to do that, you're going to want to use something like your Vigor that's going to be on the back bar, but we'll touch on that in a second. The fifth ability on the front bar is Mortal Coil. Mortal Coil is such a fun and powerful ability, and once you get in the habit of always having your Mortal Coil attached to something somewhere, your performance on this character is going to greatly improve, and that's for any Necromancer in PvP. This is going to siphon life from a corpse, healing us for almost 20,000 damage over 12 seconds. Not only that, but it's also going to heal any allies that are between you and the corpse as well. But that's not all. It's also going to restore 1,300 stamina over 12 seconds, which means it's going to be great for our sustain. This ability has no cost. It doesn't cost mag, it doesn't cost stam. It's a free cast ability, which means that 1,200 stamina over 12 seconds is pure stamina gains. This is a large part of why keeping this ability up at all times is going to greatly improve your character's ability to survive. Not only that, but while having this ability slotted, our healing done is increased by 3% just for having it slotted. So this ability is healing you, and it's improving your sustain, and it costs nothing to cast, so you have no reason not to keep it up. It does require a corpse on the ground, but because you're always using Blast Bones, that's going to leave a corpse on the ground. Not only that, but your back bar has 2 more abilities that are leaving corpses on the ground as long as they fully expire. That's your Spirit Guardian and your Beckoning Armor. If you recast these before they run out, they will not leave a corpse on the ground. That's important to note, especially if you're going to try to use one of these to grab a coil. And for the front bar ultimate, Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Dawnbreaker is a fantastic ultimate because it allows us to take advantage of some Fighter's Guild abilities, but also, it's great for our burst damage. It's going to do 15,000 damage unbuffed, right? When we're actually buffed with our combo, that's going to be a way bigger number, and an additional 17,000 damage over the next 6 seconds. And it stuns your enemy for 2 seconds. So as part of your combo, you're going to be swinging this Dawnbreaker, and that's going to stun your enemy for 2 seconds, giving you a nice little window of opportunity to finish that enemy up, especially if they're not quick to break free. And even if they do manage to break free right away, they have to eat that really thick stamina cost for breaking free. It's hard on their sustain, and it's great damage. Using this is also going to proc our Balorgs, which is going to increase our penetration and weapon damage by 3,000 for the next 12 seconds. And just for having this ability slotted, it's a Fighter's Guild ability, so all of our abilities on this front bar get an additional 3% weapon damage added to them. All right, now for the back bar. The first ability on the back bar is Hexproof. This is great for the Battlegrounds. You're gonna be able to remove curses, dots, debuffs, all sorts of things with this ability. It costs health instead of stam or mag, so it's almost kind of free. You have so much health that 1,800 health costs is negligible most times. You know, if you find yourself really low, it's still usually worth it to cast this, because this is gonna stop all those dots that the enemy has procced on you with their sets or with their abilities. It's just going to get rid of them for you. Okay, this will remove up to 4 at a time, and while slotted, the cost of all of our abilities on this bar are reduced by 3%, so we get a 3% cost reduction of all abilities. It's great, because if we're on the back bar, we're usually trying to conserve and regain our resources. This is where we come to survive this back bar. This is where we're going to come cast all of the abilities that we need to cast to keep ourselves alive. So the better our sustain back here, the better. And this ability is a bit of a flexibility. You could replace this ability with something like Puncture for increased penetration, or any other ability that looks interesting or fun to use. So if you've got someone else in the group cleansing you, removing your debuffs, then you can remove Hexproof and run something else instead. The second ability on the back bar is going to be Elude. Elude is going to give us Major Evasion, which reduces the AoE damage we take by 20%. There is a lot of damage in this game that qualifies as AoE damage, right? It's anything that falls over a large area, whether it's a Dawnbreaker, a Blast Bones, Acid Spray, right? There are so many abilities that are AoE that are going to be launched and hurled at you constantly in PvP, and this is going to make it so that all of these do 20% less damage to you. That's huge. That's a massive damage reduction, and this is a large part of why this character is going to be so tanky. But it does more than that. While it's active, whenever you take damage from a direct area of effect attack on you, you gain Major Expedition for 6 seconds, increasing your move speed by 30%. So you'll see me zipping around in the footage behind here, and whenever I'm zipping around really fast, it's because this Major Expedition has been procced for that 6-second period. It's great for chasing down an enemy or getting away from one. Each piece of medium armor that you wear increases the duration of that ability. We have 6 pieces of medium on, so we've got a 6-second Major Expedition. The third ability on the back bar is old and trusty Resolving Vigor. This is going to heal you for 17,500 health over 4 seconds, right? That's 4,000 health per second. You can come back here. It only costs 2,600 stamina, and it's going to more or less top you back off unless you have a ton of damage in. This can out heal. This combined with a little bit of blocking or dodge rolling is going to out heal almost any amount of incoming damage. It's really hard to die if you have enough stamina to cast Resolving Vigor. And as always, remember that's an unbuffed number, so it's healing you for actually a lot more when you're actually in combat and you're proccing your sets. The fourth ability on the back bar is Spirit Guardian. Spirit Guardian is one of my favorite parts about the Necromancer, because this is going to be a nice 16-second heal over time. You cast it, you forget it, and it's just there healing you for 3,000 health every 2 seconds. But that's not all it does. It's also going to reduce the amount of damage you take by 10% from all sources of damage. Just a flat 10% damage mitigation. That's an entire CP node right there as a passive on this nice ability that we were probably going to use anyway. So there we go. We've got 20% damage reduction from this Elude. We've got another 10% from the Spirit Guardian here. Then finally, we've got Beckoning Armor. This is going to give us Major Resolve. In other words, it's going to increase our resistances by 6,000. That is huge. When this is up, you're going to take much less damage. When this drops, if you forget to recast it, you're going to take a lot more damage. So if you ever die really fast, it's usually because you forgot to come back and reapply these buffs here on your back bar, which are going to greatly reduce the amount of damage you have incoming. Beckoning Armor, also one of my favorite abilities in the game, because not only does it give us Major Resolve, a lot of abilities give us Major Resolve, but this also chains in enemies that attack you from range. So if there's a mage that makes the mistake of light attacking you from a distance, they're going to be sucked right in on top of you, and that's perfect. Since you're melee, you can start unloading on them. They almost never expect this to happen. They're almost always caught off guard. So if you're ready for it, it's really easy to capitalize on it when this happens. And finally, our ultimate on the back bar is going to be Ravenous Goliath. We're picking this ultimate for a couple of reasons. One, there's some nice class passives that are activated by having this here on our turtle bar. Also, it's a great ultimate when you just need to survive. If you have a lot of pressure coming in from the enemy, if you're outnumbered and you know your chances of surviving aren't great, but you have 250 ultimate saved up, man, popping this Ravenous Goliath has got me out of a few kinks. Also, that 250 ultimate is going to multiply really well with our Battlegrounds monster set because that is multiplied by the amount of ult used. Since this costs a whopping 250 ultimate times 23, this means if you use this ultimate, you're getting almost 6,000 weapon damage and 6,000 penetration. And you will hit so hard when this ultimate is active for 12 seconds following its cast. So make sure to unload as hard as you can on one of the enemies in front of you after you pop your Goliath, because you're going to be really hard to kill and you're going to be doing an insane amount of damage. This ultimate is going to both increase your max health by 30,000 and heal you for 30,000. So if you have roughly 30,000 before you pop this ultimate, you will have 60,000 health after you pop it. And while you're transformed, you're going to get health back for every light and heavy attack that you do to your enemy, while also getting health back for any AoE damage that you do with the aura that this ability has as well. In other words, it's really hard to die for 20 seconds after you use this ultimate. The downside to it is that it costs 250. That is a lot of ult charge. You usually don't have that much ult charge sitting around, but when you do, it's a lot of fun. Okay, now let's touch on the passives we're going to be using. We're going to grab all of the passives in Gravelord. Probably the most important one to be aware of here is Dismember. While a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration are increased by 1,500. So anytime you have a Blast Bones in the area, you're getting an additional 1,500 penetration. So make sure you always have a Blast Bones summoned and getting ready to explode. Not only is it your best source of damage, it's also increasing your penetration anytime it's in the area. We're also going to be grabbing all of the passives from the Bone Tyrant line. Whenever enemies around you die, you get resources back. You take 15% less damage from dots. That's huge. You're going to increase your healing received by 2% for each Bone Tyrant ability slotted. We've got 2 abilities slotted on the back bar where we're going when we need the turtle, increasing our healing done by 4% back there. And then of course we get 1,250 extra health from Last Grasp. This is a great passive because it's a base stat, so it scales really well with any bonuses you get. And then under Living Death, we're also going to grab all the passives. This is going to make it so you heal yourself more whenever you have negative effects on you, and in PvP that's pretty much always. You're going to increase your healing criticals. You're also going to get ults every time you use an ability on a corpse. This is one more reason to use Mortal Coil at all times. Every 16 seconds, you can get another 10 ult charge just by popping this button. And Undead Confederate, which is going to give you 200 resource recovery for mag and stam. We're using both mag and stam abilities on this build, so it's nice. And make sure you always have your Guardian up. This is going to make sure that you have 100% uptime on that 200 mag and stam recovery at all times. The nice thing about this, you're never going to run out of magicka on this character. So this ability costs magicka and it's triggering a 200 stam recovery bonus. So that stam recovery is all gain, right? Whereas the mag recovery is basically paying you back for the cost of the ability. But the 200 stam recovery is all gains because this ability costs magicka. We're in the two-handed line. We're going to grab all of the passives because we're running a two-handed weapon on the front bar. This is just basically going to increase your efficiency with the weapon, your stamina sustain, and the amount of damage that you put out, as well as giving you increased penetration while using a maul, which is very critical in PvP. In the one-handed shield line, we're going to grab all of the passives as well. These are basically going to increase your sustain. It's going to increase the amount of damage you can block with sword and board. It's going to reduce what it costs you to block that damage. Basically in PvP, as long as you have resources, you can stay alive. You can block, you can dodge roll, and you can cast your heals. The second you run out of resources, that's when you die. So coming back to your sword and board, whenever you need to block, is essential for managing your sustain. This passive right here says that you can block 20% more damage, and this passive right here says it costs 36% less of your stamina to block when you have your sword and board out than when you block with your two-handed weapon out. So always go to your sword and board if you need to turtle. You really want to try to avoid blocking with your two-handed weapon, as that's costing you 36% more stamina every time you block an attack on your front bar. Then for the armor passives, we're going to grab all of the medium armor passives and all applicable heavy armor passives as well. Since we are wearing one piece of heavy, In the Fighters Guild, be sure to grab the first 4 passives. In the Undaunted Guild, grab both passives. Under Assault, you're going to want continuous attack. Anytime you're on your mount, you're going to move 30% faster. And for the racial passives, go ahead and grab all of your races passives. Then, of course, make sure you get medicinal use level 3. This is going to make it so that your potion buffs last as long as the cooldown, so that you can have 100% uptime on those sweet potion buffs. Speaking of, let's get into consumables. All right. For the potion, you can go ahead and use Essence of Immovability. This is going to make it so that you're immune to knockback and disabling effects for 10 seconds after popping this, which is perfect because after you pop this, you have that 12-second window to do as much damage to your enemy, right? You're proccing your Clever Alchemist, right? And you don't want someone to knock you down as soon as you're going to unload your burst on them. So this making you immune to knockback and disabling effects for 10 seconds is huge. That pairs perfectly with Clever Alchemist. It's also going to grant you Major Savagery, which is going to give you increased crit chance for 47 seconds. And it's going to restore your stamina while increasing your stamina recovery by 30% for 47 seconds. And you can see there, it says you have a 45-second cooldown on this potion, but these buffs last for 47 seconds. That's thanks to our alchemy passive that increases the duration of our potions. That's why these potions are lasting even longer than the cooldown. Typically, they'd run out right around 40 seconds, and you'd have a few seconds without any buffs up. As for the food, we're going to use Artaeum Takeaway Broth. Artaeum Takeaway Broth costs around 6,000-7,000 gold per meal on PC. It is kind of expensive. It does last 2 hours. You'll have no problem making that much money back in those 2 hours, regardless of what you're doing. However, if you are looking for a cheap alternative, you could go with something like Dubious Cameron Throne, which is going to give you max health, max stam, and some stam recovery. The most important thing about your food is that it's going to help your health pull out, and it's going to help your stam recovery help. So just pick something that gives max health and stam recovery and you'll be all right. Artaeum Takeaway Broth being the deluxe version of that option because it's going to provide max health and health recovery, max stam and stam recovery. Okay, now let's talk about your burst rotation. Basically what you're going to do when it's time to unload on your enemy, when you see that you have a potion ready to spend, right? Your potion is off cooldown. Your ultimate is up, your Flawless Dawnbreaker is up and ready to cast. You're going to want to make sure you pre-buff yourself. You're going to get all your buffs up. Your Elude, your Rally, right? These are 20-second buffs, so go ahead and start with those. If you can, get Immortal Coil down, get your Beckoning Armor and your Spirit Guardian up, and now you're ready. Go ahead and cast a Blast Bones, then go to the back bar, cast your potion. This activates almost 700 weapon and spell damage for the next 20 seconds. That potion you just popped. Now go to the front bar. It's time to ult on your enemy. This is going to trigger your Baylorg. So now that you've popped your Dawnbreaker, you've got 700 weapon damage from your Clever Alchemist. You've got another 3,000 weapon damage from your Dawnbreaker. And your Blast Bones with all those buffs on it should be getting ready to hit the enemy. Meanwhile, your enemy is probably stunned on the floor and breaking free from that. But you're not stopping. You're going to go ahead and Dizzying Swing if the enemy is not anywhere near execute, or execute if they are. If you go into Dizzying Swing spam because they're almost low and you want to put on that pressure, make sure to follow it up with a medium attack every now and then to knock them to the floor. And don't forget to cast Blast Bones again the second your Blast Bones explodes, right? Because this is your largest source of burst damage. The only reason you wouldn't cast another Blast Bones is because you feel like you need to keep the immediate pressure up. This does have a 2.5 second delay. 2.5 seconds is a long time for someone to get their health back. So if they're low, it may be better to just follow up with Dizzying Swing spam into execute spam as soon as they get around 30% health. All of this will happen in your 12-second window from Baylorg, your 20-second window from Clever Alchemist, and of course the constant uptime due to Blast Bones from your Diamond's Victory. Once you get into the habit of preloading your Blast Bones, popping your potion on the back bar, then dropping your Dawnbreaker on the enemy and going into your Dizzying Swing and execute spam, you will easily eliminate so many people. Whether there's one person in front of you or 2 people in front of you, it doesn't matter because your Dawnbreaker hits 2 people, your Blast Bones is hitting 2 people, and if you follow up with a heavy attack from your Vodashron weapon, that's going to hit 2 people as well for another 8,000 damage. So it won't be uncommon for you to take out 2 or 3 people at a time with this combination, whether you're in Battlegrounds or in Cyrodiil. And that's basically it. It's a really simple rotation. It's just a matter of getting in the habit of casting the Blast Bones, the potion, the Dawnbreaker, and then going into your spammables. And don't forget to proc that Vodashon Hollow's two-handed heavy attack. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the CP real quick. For the Slottables, we're going to be running Duelist Rebuff. This is going to reduce our damage taken from single target attacks by 2%. We're going to run Biting Aura, which is going to increase the damage of our area of effect attacks. This is going to include our Blast Bones and our Dawnbreaker. We're also going to run Master Arms, which is going to increase the damage done with our direct damage attacks, such as our Dizzying Swing and our Executioner. And we're also going to use Resilience, which is going to give us critical resistance. As far as the order of investing these abilities goes, be sure to check out the written guide linked in the description below. The written guide in the description below is going to be a great source of information for all of your enchants and traits for your gear as well. In the red tree, we're going to be using Rejuvenation, which is going to be great for our sustain. We're going to use Slippery, which is going to break us free automatically without us having to do it once every 21 seconds. We're going to use Survival Instincts, which is going to reduce the cost of our abilities. And we're going to take Juggernaut, which is going to reduce the damage we take by 10% anytime we're under CC. You're most vulnerable when you've been CC'd. That is almost always when you're going to die. It's because someone knocked you to the ground and you're not back up yet, or they CC'd you in some other way and you're not able to block, you're not able to dodge roll, you're just standing there taking the unmitigated damage. And as for the green CP tree, go ahead and use Steed's Blessing, Liquid Efficiency, Rationer, and if you want, you can throw in Gifted Rider. The important thing to know is Gifted Rider only improves your move speed while you're on your mount, and Steed's Blessing only improves your move speed out of combat while you're off your mount. So if you're in Cyrodiil, Gifted Rider might be more useful, and when you're in the Battlegrounds, Steed's Blessing is going to be more useful. And that's it, guys. That's all there is to the PvP Stamina Necromancer. This class is great at PvP right now. It's incredibly strong. It's incredibly tanky. It's got great burst potential because of Blast Bones. It's just a really well-rounded class in PvP right now. It's really fun to play, and I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions about the build, please don't hesitate to ask down in the comments below. If you want to see the build in action, be sure to swing by my stream. I'll be running it there through Midyear Mayhem. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing for more ESO content. And if you ever want to hang out with someone else who loves ESO, be sure to swing by my stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. Finally, I'd like to thank my YouTube members for supporting the channel by becoming members. To find out how to become a member of this channel and what the perks are, click the join button below. I'll see you in the next video.